What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and while everybody else is taking an early vacation, I'm still hard at work bringing you the content that you deserve. We have got UFC picks coming up, Fight Gloves are on, UFC 148 goes down July the 7th, headlined by the Middleweight Championship rematch between Anderson the Spider Silva and Chael, the People's Champion, Sonnen. Here come the fight picks. We're going to start on the undercard, the prelims. The Facebook prelim has Rafaelo Oliveira. I think you pronounce it Rafaelo. Oliveira against Yoslandi Izquierdo, and there's going to be a lot of names on this card that I am probably going to come close to butchering, and I apologize. Oliveira 14-5 on his pro career, but only 1-4 inside the octagon in the UFC. Currently on a 2-loss streak to Gleison Tebow as well as Yves Edwards. And his only UFC win came against Gunderson in 2010. So this is a guy desperately in need of a win inside the octagon. Yoslandi Izquierdo 6-1 on his pro career. He is 0-1 in his UFC. Just going to adjust the camera there. In his UFC career, he's 0-1. He was subbed by Madadi in his UFC debut. He's got 3 victories by way of TKO, and his ground game, his top ground game is very, very good. But his ground grappling is really questionable in the couple of fights of his that I've watched. If he gets put on his back on the ground, he has not shown me a whole lot of answers for being put on the ground. I expect Rafaelo Oliveira is going to want to put this thing on the ground very, very quickly. I don't think he's going to finish Izquierdo, but I'm very comfortable predicting Rafaelo Oliveira by way of unanimous judges' decision. Moving, and that was at the lightweight division, by the way. Sticking with the lightweight division, we have John Alessio taking on Shane Roller. And I'm actually really looking forward to this fight, not just strictly based on the fact that John Alessio is Canadian, but I like both of these fighters, so I think this is going to be a really excellent fight. Alessio, 34-15 on his pro career, winless in 4 UFC fights. He's 0-4. In his last fight, he lost to Mark Bocek. I think I may have actually picked him to win that fight. I'm trying to remember. Again, and I think I said this about him last time, he really lacks that notable career-defining win, but at the same time, he has 27 finish victories in his career. I think he has 11 or 12 by knockout and 14 or 15 by submission. He's somewhere up in that range. So he's a guy that finishes a lot of his wins, but he just doesn't have that career-defining, notable victory. Moving to Shane Roller. Shane Roller, 10-6 on his pro career, only 1-3 in the UFC. He won his UFC debut, but has since gone on a 3-loss streak to Melvin Guillard, TJ Grant, and Michael Johnson. So he's not fighting nobodies, but at the same time, he is on a 3-loss streak, 3-fight losing streak. And 5 of his 6 losses have come by way of finish. So he's been finished 5 times in those 6 losses, only going to decision once. These are both guys that need wins. Obviously, their UFC records 0-4 and 1-3, not very good. That being said, I think experience is going to be the payoff here, and if John Alessio is going to pick up his career-defining victory, starting with Shane Roller is not a bad place to start. I'm going to go with John Alessio. I think he's going to finish this fight by way of submission in the 2nd round. Moving up to the middleweights, we have Konstantinos Philippou taking on Ricky Fukuda. Again, 2 more fighters that I really like. On paper, this pay-per-view is fantastic. Konstantinos Philippou, 10-2-1 on his pro career. He is 3-1 in the UFC, currently riding a 3-fight win streak against George Rivera, Hammond, as well as Court McGee. I can't remember Hammond's first name, but he's there. So his 3-fight win streak. What makes Philippou so difficult to deal with is the fact that he fights southpaw. And I know one of the other guys on YouTube that I follow, Mayo Dread, always makes a big deal about southpaw fighters, because it's a whole different ball game when you step in and you're fighting a southpaw. And Philippou also has 5 knockouts, so 5 of his 10 career wins have come by way of either knockout or TKO. Ricky Fukuda, 18-5 on his pro career. He has split his 2 fights in the UFC. He's 1-1. In his last fight, he beat Steve Cantwell by way of, I believe it was a decision. Speaking of decisions, when Ricky Fukuda fights go to decisions, he is 10-4. 10 have gone his way, 4 haven't. So that could be something to watch. If this fight goes to decision, more than likely Ricky Fukuda has at least done enough to snag the victory. But the one thing that I really have to think about here is there really such thing as the Japan factor? And what I mean by the Japan factor is fighters training in Japan, then coming over to the States, or just a lot of travel time prior to their fights. I didn't think it existed, but then I saw that absolute turd that Hatsu Hayoki laid in his last fight. So, maybe the Japan factor is going to play into it. Even if Ricky Fukuda trained in the States, I was still going to take Konstantinos Philippou in this fight. Southpaws are deadly. I've got Philippou winning this fight by way of knockout or technical knockout in the 3rd round. Moving back down to the lightweights, we have Melvin Guillard taking on Fabricio Camoes, I think is how you pronounce it. Melvin Guillard, 29-10-2-1 on his pro career. He is 10-6 in the UFC, so a lot of UFC experience. Currently riding a 2-loss streak to a couple of real elite fighters in the lightweight division, those being Jim Miller and Joe Lozon. And the big thing when I think about Guillard always comes to fight, but 9 of his 10 pro losses have come by way of submission. So Guillard's got his game plan, but when the fight hits the ground, Guillard's got a lot of problems. Taking on Fabricio Camoes, and the ground game, I think, is going to really come into play here. Fabricio Camoes, 14-6-1 on his pro career. He is 1-1-1 in the UFC. Currently riding a 3-fight win streak against Lopez, Escudero, and Hayden. That's both inside and outside of the UFC. And he is a 3rd-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Royler Gracie. So, grappling. So, I'm pretty scared for Melvin in this fight. I like Melvin Guillard. I like guys that come to the octagon to fight. And Melvin always does that. Unfortunately, I think Melvin's grappling is going to fail for him yet again. I'm predicting Fabricio Camoes in something of an upset by submission inside of the 1st round. Sticking with the lightweights again, that's 4 of the 5 fights on the undercard are all at lightweight. I didn't notice that until right now. We have Gleison Tibau taking on, and this will be the hardest name to pronounce on the whole card, Habib Nurmagomedov. Habib Nurmagomedov. Go with it. Gleison Tibau, 25-7 on his pro career. He is 10-5 in the UFC. A lot of octagon experience. Currently riding a 3-fight win streak against Kurt Pellegrino, Charles Oliveira, as well as Rafael Dos Anjos. And Gleison Tibau is a very dangerous grappler. His finishes display that, and his fights display that. Very, very dangerous when the fight hits the ground. Nurmagomedov, I have to admit, I don't know a ton about him. I've watched a couple of his fights. I know he's Russian. I know he's a samboist. I know he's Grandmaster or World Master of Combat Sambo, something like that. Perfect 17-0 on his pro career. 1-0 inside the UFC, subbing Kamal Shalarus in his debut. 13 of his 17 wins have come by way of finish, and this guy fought 7 times in 2011. That's quite a few fights in the 1 year. Again, with Nurmagomedov being a samboist, you got to expect this fight is probably going to hit the mat early and often. I actually expect to see 3 full rounds of ground fighting, but exciting ground fighting, because these are both dangerous guys who can finish on the ground. I had to give the edge to Gleison Tibau. That's based strictly on the full amount of octagon experience that Gleison Tibau has. I'm expecting him to take this by way of unanimous judges' decision, but I think it will be close on all 3 scorecards, probably 29-28. So now we're going to move on to the main card. We actually have a rare 6-fight main card, which is excellent. I don't know if that's making up for the turd that Clay Guida and Gray Maynard laid, or what is it? But whatever it is, it's a 6-fight main card, and I'm not going to complain about it. Starting with the bantamweights, we have Ivan Menjivar taking on Mike Easton. Ivan Menjivar, 24-8 on his pro career, 3-1 inside the UFC, currently riding a 3-fight win streak over Charlie Valencia, Nick Pace, and I think it's Albert. I can't remember. I can't even remember his first name, but I think Albert was his third opponent. I didn't have them written down. 18 finishes inside the first round on his career for Ivan Menjivar. So he likes to get out there and get the fight done quickly. If it goes the other way, if the fight goes to decision, Menjivar is only 3-5. So Menjivar definitely likes to get in there and finish these fights, preferably, like I said, inside the first round. But if the fight goes to decision, decisions haven't always been kind to him. Mike Easton, 12-1 on his pro career, perfect 2-0 in the UFC, currently riding a 7-fight win streak. His last 2 wins have come against Bloodworth and Papazian, and 6 of his 12 pro wins have come by way of decision. So you have Mike Easton, who I believe, I can't remember if he was Div 1. No, that was, I think, Chad Mendez, who we're going to talk about later. Easton's a talented wrestler, and I think that's displayed by the fact that he's won 6 of his 12 wins have come by way of decision. Easton is a beast. You can't be 12-1, and you can't have won your first 2 UFC fights and be on a 7-fight win streak without being something of a beast. That being said, Menjivar is my sentimental favorite, and I can't bring myself to bet against Menjivar. I'm going to take Ivan Menjivar by way of technical knockout inside the first round, and if that doesn't happen, Easton's probably going to win the fight by decision, but I'm predicting that it's going to happen. Menjivar by TKO in the first round. Up to the featherweights, we have Chad Money Mendez taking on Cody McKenzie. Chad Mendez, 11-1 on his pro career. He's 2-1 in the UFC. Lost to Jose Aldo in his title fight in the last fight. Elite wrestling, people could call him boring. His fights have been somewhat boring, but he is an elite wrestler and fighter at this weight class, and there's really no denying that. Like I said, made it all the way to a title fight, lost to Jose Aldo, which, you know, everybody does, so no worries there. Cody McKenzie, 13-2 on his pro career. He's 2-2 inside the UFC. 12 of his wins have come by way of guillotine choke. He knows how to do one thing, and he knows how to do it really, really well. And his 2 career losses have both come by way of rear naked choke. So that's 14 submission decisions in his 15 career fights. I thought that was really cool. And in his last fight, he beat Levasseur, I think. Chad Mendez has never been guillotined, never been submitted by way of guillotine in his career. So I don't think that Cody McKenzie is going to win this fight. I'm taking Chad Money Mendez by way of unanimous judges' decision. Up to the welterweight division, we have Dong-hyun Stun Gun Kim. That's the best I've ever pronounced his name, by the way. Awesome. So Stun Gun Kim taking on Damian Maia. Stun Gun Kim, 15-1-1-1 on his pro career, so he's got a no decision as well as a draw. He is 6-1-1 in the UFC, and I believe his one was a no contest, I think. He had a unanimous decision victory over Sean Pearson in his last fight. My issue with Stun Gun is he's got, if you look at his record, he's got a lot of finishes. But since he came into the UFC, it hasn't exactly happened. Art Bathed in Crime on YouTube made a point about Chael Sonnen in his video, which you should go check out his video, by the way. But he made a point about Chael Sonnen being a little pillow-fisted since he's come to the UFC. You want to talk about a guy that's been pillow-fisted? Stun Gun Kim, since he's come into the UFC, has been pillow-fisted. His last victory by a finish came against, I think, Joseph Tan in, in 2008. It's been a long time since Stun Gun has finished anyone. He's been finished. He was finished in this one loss by way of flying knee, I believe. And ever since then, I don't know if he's just sort of stepped back and been like, well, shit, I don't want that to happen again. But for whatever reason, dude has been a decision machine in the last little while in the UFC. And it's not like he's not capable of finishing guys. He is. But that takes you back to the whole pillow-fisted thing. He throws a lot of strikes, keeps his opponents at bay with strikes, but in terms of the amount of damage that he's actually doing, 50-50. Demian Maia, 15-4 on his pro career, 9-4 in the UFC. Ever since Demian Maia lost, he had a loss to Nate Marquardt in 2009. And that was, I think, his first career loss. He's been really hit and miss since then. I don't know, ever since that first loss, I don't know, maybe he was never able to sort of mentally recover from it. 8 straight fights are going to the judges. What scares me about Demian Maia is he does not have very good stand-up, and yet he's chosen in his last few fights to be, again, as Tyler put it on his video, I hate to keep stealing your material, but as Tyler put it on his video, K1 Maia, and it's a good reference, because that's kind of what he's been. Hasn't been using that elite level I was going to say Lujitsu. That's Lubu Jiu-Jitsu. He hasn't been using that elite level Jiu-Jitsu as effectively as he could be, opting to rather stand up and strike, and that's usually not a good game plan for Demian Maia. So I would typically say that this is a classic striker versus grappler matchup, but with the way Demian Maia's been fighting the last little while, it's not necessarily. It's a pillow-fisted striker versus bad striker match, I guess. Anyways, I'm going to take Stun Gun in this fight because I'm, again, afraid that Demian Maia is going to try to keep the fight standing, which he shouldn't do. I still don't think Stun Gun's going to finish the fight. I think it'll be Stun Gun by way of unanimous judge's decision in what could end up being an extremely boring fight. Up to the middleweights, we have Cung Le taking on Patrick Cote. Cung Le, 7-2 on his pro MMA career. He is 0-1 in the UFC. He was, of course, TKO'd by Wanderlei Silva in his UFC debut. Undefeated 17-0 professional kickboxer, 12 of those 17 fights ending in knockouts. And every single one of his pro MMA fights has also ended in either a knockout or a TKO. Cung Le has kicks for days, and he's a very, very exciting fighter to watch, even given the fact that he's 40 years old, has probably lost a step or two, but watching him use like his Sanshu style and everything, very, very talented. And just as importantly, fun to watch. Patrick Cote, 17-7 on his pro career. He is 4-7 in the UFC. Former middleweight title contender. Of course, he's currently riding a 4-fight win streak outside of the UFC, after having a 3-fight losing streak inside the UFC. He had a loss in the title fight to Silva, he lost to Alan Belcher, and also lost to Tom Lawler. Inside the UFC, before being cut from the promotion, now riding a 4-fight win streak, coming back into the octagon, and he's gonna get his face kicked off by Cung Le. I'm taking Cung Le in this fight, TKO in the first round. Honestly, I would have been hyped for this fight back in 2007. Right, when I think Cung Le at the time was still undefeated. Patrick Cote was like up there as a middleweight title contender. If this fight would have happened 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh my god, Cung Le's fighting Patrick Cote. But, you know, in 2012, you know, it might be a good fight, and I think it'll be fun to see Cung Le knock him the fuck out, because I think that's what's going to happen. But, you know, I'll take a chance on it, and like I say, Cung Le TKO in the first round. Co-main event, light heavyweight division, Forrest Griffin taking on Tito Ortiz. I need to get this out of the way right away. My prediction and my breakdown of this fight is in no way influenced by the fact that Tito Ortiz's wife or ex-wife or whatever, I don't even know if they're still together, Jenna Jameson, called me a Guido ball licker on Twitter. So the fact that I had a mini beef with his wife, ex-wife, whatever, in no way is reflected in my prediction for this fight. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Forrest Griffin, 18-7 on his pro career, 9-5 in the UFC. Probably the funniest guy that's ever put on a pair of MMA gloves. Griffin was TKO'd by Shogun Rua in his last fight. His last 3 wins inside the octagon have all come by way of decision, but his last 4 losses have all come by way of knockout. So, you know, Forrest is a guy that for the longest time I've always kind of had the inkling that, you know what, I don't think his heart's in this fight game anymore. I think his heart's in it once he's in there and once he gets popped a couple times. You know, just for the longest time I've been thinking, like, you know, I don't really know whether this guy wants to do this anymore. You know what I mean? He's made his money, he's left his legacy, so, you know, does he still want to do this? Speaking of which, Tito Ortiz, 16-10-1 on his pro career, 15-10-1 in the UFC. He's only ever had 1 pro MMA fight outside of the UFC. Currently riding a 2-fight losing streak to Rashad Evans and I have Big Nog here, but it can't be Big Nog, it must be Little Nog. And his only win since 2006 was that fight against Ryan Bader, where everyone was like, oh my god, Tito's back! And don't worry, I was one of you. I could see this as a potential dual retirement match. Like, I could see, like, Vince McMahon sitting in the crowd going, good, good. Like, you know, I expect this to be, like, at least one of these 2 guys, if not both of them after this fight, might just say, you know what, I'm going to call it a career win, lose, or draw, which actually could make for a really entertaining fight. I'm predicting it's going to be a really entertaining fight, and I am predicting Tito Ortiz will defeat Forrest Griffin by way of 3rd round submission. That moves us to the main event of the evening, Middleweight Championship match. Anderson, the Spider Silva, defending his title in the rematch against Chael, the People's Champion, Sonnen. Anderson Silva, 31-4 in his pro career, undefeated in 14 UFC fights, currently riding a 15-win streak, including 3 straight finishes, 2 of which by knockout against Vitor Belfort as well as Yushin Okami. Chael Sonnen, 27-11-1 on his pro career. That record is slightly deceiving, as are many things with Chael, including his testosterone count. 6-4 in the UFC, currently riding a 2-fight win streak against both Brian Stann and Michael Bisping. 5 of his 6 UFC wins have come by way of decision. Chael's MO is his pace and his wrestling. Very good wrestling, cuts a wicked pace for a middleweight, and he keeps coming at you, and he'll take 2 or 3 shots if it means getting you to the ground, because that's where he wants you. I've made no bones in the past with the fact that I don't really like Chael Sonnen. I think Chael is you know, he was one of those guys that I didn't really buy into the whole WWE routine. I say that like it's a bad thing. I'm a huge fucking pro wrestling fan. But, you know, I don't know. I felt like he was kind of fake, kind of like the Josh Koscheck sort of thing, where he's playing a character that nobody told him he had to play. That's the way I felt about Chael Sonnen. Anyway, I can't deny what he's done in the octagon by any means, because he's had a lot of success. He's had this middleweight title shot before. Watching the Anderson Silva Chael Sonnen 1 is one of my career highlights in terms of watching mixed martial arts, because I remember watching that fight with after every round with my hands on my head going, oh my God, Chael Sonnen's going to beat Anderson Silva. This is insane. And then Anderson, of course, pulled off that miracle triangle in the 5th round. And that was that. But like, then the whole post fight with Chael, like, I beat him up for 23 minutes, I didn't lose, and he wrapped his legs around my head for 8 seconds, and they said he won. And it's like, well, but you tapped, you gave up. Like, that's what happens. But you know, I certainly can't deny what Chael Sonnen has done in the octagon. That being said, Anderson Silva is a once-in-a-generation talent. I think Silva is going to do absolutely everything he can to keep this fight standing. And I know that Chael is going to bring that pace, and I know that Chael is going to take a couple of shots to get the fight to the ground. But if Anderson's got any brain in his head, he's been training, he's been pulling in the best wrestlers into that camp that he possibly can. And I think Silva's going to be ready for it. I'm picking Anderson Silva to win this fight by way of 3rd round knockout or technical knockout. Like I say, I think Chael is going to bring the thunder, and I think this is going to be a really, really, really good fight. That being said, like I say, you give Anderson a second chance, and he will fuck you up. So I think Anderson's going to fuck Chael up. But it's all good, because Chael's sort of using his MMA career as a vehicle for his future political career, I'm sure. So it's not really going to matter to him one way or the other. Really, whether he wins this fight, probably. And I may get some hate for that, but whatever. So I'm taking Anderson Silva to win the fight, 3rd round TKO, to once again defend his middleweight title. Those are my predictions for UFC 148. I'll run them down for you one more time. Starting on the undercard, lightweight division, Rafael Oliveira defeating Yoslandi Izquierdo by unanimous judges' decision. Lightweight, we've got John Alessio defeating Shane Roller by way of submission in the 2nd round. Middleweight, we have Konstantinos Philippou defeating Ricky Fukuda by way of knockout or technical knockout in the 3rd round. At the lightweight division, we have Fabricio Camoes defeating Melvin Guillard by way of 1st round submission. And also at lightweight, we have Gleison Tibau defeating Habib Nurmagomedov by way of unanimous judges' decision. Moving on to the 6-fight main card, we have at the bantamweight division, Ivan Menjivar defeating Mike Easton by way of 1st round knockout or technical knockout. Featherweights, we have Chad Mendez defeating Cody McKenzie by way of unanimous judges' decision. At welterweight, we have Dong-hyun Stun Gun Kim defeating Damian Maia by way of unanimous judges' decision. At the middleweight division, we have Kung Lei defeating Patrick Cote by way of 1st round knockout or technical knockout. At the light heavyweight division, co-main event, we have Tito Ortiz submitting Forrest Griffin in the 3rd round. And in the main event, middleweight championship fight, we have Anderson the Spider Silva once again defending his middleweight title, defeating Chael Sonnen by way of TKO in the 3rd round. Those are my predictions. Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Hit me with all the hate and the predictions in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. Adios.